it in like the 5th grade, where we had to learn about sailors, that we had to go on an ancient like 17th century ship, right? That's still floating, and we would go there and stay overnight, and we would each be we were pretending we were role-playing sailors, okay? And it was like an overnight field trip. We went on the ship, except the ship was haunted, and I didn't know that at the time. We had to get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to stand up outside, and I would have to like go and, you know, do our activities and stand watch on the ship, right? And it was weird. It was really weird, because when we were sleeping on the floor of that ship, on the dirty floor, it was very dirty, there was footsteps of someone pacing down the hall, and I knew there was one adult that was up pacing the floors, but I saw that person walk by, right? So who's walking down there? At the end of the night, I had to like go wake up the galley crew. The galley crew was the one who had to cook food for us, right? So I had to go wake them up, and I had to go find them in the pitch black darkness. And I didn't really believe in ghosts at all prior to this point. I kind of was scared of them, but I didn't believe they actually existed. Then I was looking for this crew, right? I was looking for this crew, and it was pitch dark, but I kept feeling something pushing me on my back. Like somebody pushing me. And I was terrified. And I started calling out galley crew. I was so scared. And like I didn't know how to like make sense of that. So I just kind of like took it out of my mind. It wasn't until I was a teenager, deep in high school, that I started watching ghost hunting shows, because I thought they were funny, right? I thought they were really funny, because they never really find any ghosts. Usually it would just be like this one guy yelling really obnoxiously, making it all about him, and then they don't find the ghost, and they're like, we actually don't know it's haunted. So like 99% of the time, it's like that. So they never really... Yeah, oh, it's Zach Baggins! It's Zach Baggins, exactly! So I saw they had an episode that came out, right? And they went on one of the ships that I stayed on. And I was like, oh crap! And it kind of like triggered the memories, right? And the same things happened to them. And they were able to say a really rare time on that show that ship is for sure haunted. Now, it's Zach Baggins, but it just brought everything back. And that is my first like real encounter with the paranormal. It can still be BS, but that was really scary. I still don't know what touched me on my back, kept pushing me when I was a wee lad. And the reason why we're wee lad is because there was no women on ships, so we were all referred to as Mr. Especially if you were first mate, they referred to me as Mr. Shiina. So I had to pretend I was a man the entire time. Yeah, so all the adults called me Mr. Shiina. So I had to pretend I was a wee lad for like 2 weeks. That was the weirdest field trip I've ever been on. And then on top of that, I was starved. Because I hated these overnight field trips, because I was a sort of a meek seamstress. I was a sort of a meek child. I didn't really fight people for things at all. I just tried really hard on my own and minded my own business. But the boys, every single time, would eat all the food that was available on these trips. So we would line up. I would eat my little slow pace, happy, my little bowl of soup. And I'm like, oh, I'm still hungry. I'm gonna go for more soup. And it's always gone. The boys would always eat everything. They would always eat everything. Okay? And so there's nothing left for me. Yeah. So that was like my first foray into realizing I can't trust the boys in the class at all. It wasn't because they had cooties. It was because they would eat all my food, and I hated them for that. Yeah, maybe that's why I didn't grow any taller, you know? Maybe that's the reason. So the next year, there's like a camping trip that you go away from your family for a week into the wilderness in a cabin, right? And you live like military style in the forest, because they think it like builds character or whatever. And yeah, so I was in the wilderness, and I starved that week. I starved because it was like buffet style, right? It was buffet style, and there was a long banquet table, and there's one end and the second end, right? So back then they didn't really care. The food was passed down from one end down to the end, and I was placed at the end, which means by the time the plate got to me, crumbs. I was lucky if there was a crumb left. Second to last day, they had chili night. Now, remember this about me. I am lactose intolerant. Also can't eat beans. So, beans and cheese. Let's freaking go! So I ate it. I ate it after almost a week of not eating anything but maybe a granola bar throughout the day. I complained to the adults that I was very hungry. They would not feed me. I was like that kid in Oliver. Have you guys seen Oliver? The play? Please, could I have some more? I was a starving Victorian child dying of consumption, okay? So, after chili night, I finally had a full stomach. Unfortunately, it meant that I cursed my final 2 days of this trip. So after chili night, I had to go on a, what was it, like an 8-hour hike? So, you know, they had to teach you how to take care of your business with like, you know, nature. And I didn't have a very good time. Let's just put it that way. Let's put it gently. I didn't have a very good time. You know? And at the end, my suffering was not over yet. my misfortune did not end there. The treat of our 8-hour hike was at the end. There was a waterfall. There was a beautiful waterfall. But, you know, back then, safety wasn't really a concern. Parents didn't really put up a big fight or fuss whenever your kids got hurt or something like that. So, we went down the waterfall. Now, if you guys know about nature, you guys know how slippery rocks are. It was like the scariest thing. It was like this cliff. It was wet. All of us have to get on our hands and knees, try to climb up this rock. If you slip down, the rock would cling to your skin and rip off your skin as you slid your raw knees and hands down this slope, this wet, almost 90-degree slope, right? It was bad, but I made it up. I bloodied my knees, but I made it up, right? At the end, though, I got to the end and I grabbed onto a plant to haul me up. I hauled myself up using this, like, bush that I grabbed onto. I was safe, or so I thought. And at the end, a shuttle would take us the rest of the way back to the cabin. Now, what I didn't know was the plant that I grabbed onto was a stinging nettle. Out of all the plants I could have grabbed onto, it was a stinging nettle. Because I didn't know. So my hand... My tiny hand was swollen up into like a blown up comical... Like Mickey Mouse's hand. You guys know, like Mickey Mouse's hand? It looked like that. And the camp people are just like, here's some ice. That's it. They didn't really give me any medical care. They're like, it'll go away soon. Again that night, they served pasta. I didn't have any. As usual. So, I was starving, unfed, hand injured, ready to go home. And yet, the kids, the girls in my bunk, right? They had the gall to cry and say, I miss mommy. I want to go home. I'm like, you know what? At least let me sleep. At least let me sleep. 「でもまだ止めない